Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I see people are still trickling in from the waiting room, but I know our panelists have a lot of great insights to share, so I want to make sure we're able to get through everything. My name is Stacy Sawin, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of FinAbility. We are a Portland-based 501c3 organization with the mission of financially empowering survivors of domestic violence. And one of the most important things we have within our organization is our incredible Survivor Advisory Committee. This is a group of 8 incredible women who provide strategic insights, programmatic feedback, and really lead the direction of our organization through their lived experience and the insights they collect from the community. Today, they are hosting a panel, which you are all here for, called Hidden Chains, the Financial Barriers to Leaving Domestic Violence. And it's just an incredible opportunity to hear real survivor stories and experiences and to shed light on the barriers to really becoming safe and rebuilding after domestic violence. So with that said, I want to transition things over to our panelists and moderator, starting with Meredith Thompson.
Hi, I'm Meredith. I am a FinAbility board member and I chair the FinAbility Survivor Advisory Committee. My other roles are as a researcher, negotiation professor, and executive coach. I also identify as a domestic abuse survivor and know firsthand how it changes the game when, in both the short term and the long term, when survivors have access to financial and other resources. Escaping an abusive partner brings peace and freedom like we have never experienced, and having financial resources and financial knowledge is essential to both the leaving and the healing process. So I'm excited to be here and to talk with you guys. Ruhani, it's over to you.
Thank you. My name is Ruhani Amin. I'm the digital evaluator and organizer at the North Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence, in addition to my role on the Survivor Advisory Committee at FinAbility. I use she, her pronouns. My work is to lead the coalition's digital communications work around developing trauma-informed workplaces that are supportive to survivors of domestic abuse. A little bit about my early adulthood. I started by pursuing a career in healthcare. I completed a bachelor's in microbiology and then a year of coursework at the University of Washington School of Medicine. By that time, I was married to a fourth-year medical student, and my husband convinced me to withdraw from school to focus on supporting his career and growing our family. I became a stay-at-home mom for the next 9 years. And during that time, I founded an e-commerce business while working in the margins of time as a full-time caregiver. These experiences inspired my interest in graphic design and data visualization. Fast forward to today, I'm working on a master's degree in information technology and business analytics and juggling a full-time job and 50-50 co-parenting. The harm doer in my life does continue to use the children to exert his power and control over me. But despite that, I have moved mountains towards rebuilding my life and achieving financial self-sufficiency. And my work at FinAbility on the Survivor Advisory Committee has contributed a lot to that. When I'm not at work, you'll probably find me cultivating friendships with my neighbors or cooking Bangladeshi curries with my 3 children. It's my pleasure and my honor today to share my story on the Survivor panel. Thank you.
Thanks, Ruhani. Emily, over to you.
All right, thank you. I'm Emily Cathell. I am from Wilmington, Delaware, and a new FinAbility member with the Survivor Advisory Committee. I'm also part of our Women's Survivor Group for the Delaware Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and also involved with a juvenile trafficking coalition in Delaware as well. Professionally, I am a school counselor, and I have a master's in school counseling and a second master's in special education. I figure I never expected myself to be in a situation that I found myself in with domestic violence. And a lot of people, when they first meet me, don't expect it either. So I just kind of wanted to share that to shed light on it. And I am also a mom of 3 children. Their ages are 5, 6, and 8. My babies were a newborn 1 and 2 when I was able to leave the relationship, which made my situation particularly challenging. But my experiences have led me to this work today. And as Ruhani mentioned, I am also still co-parenting, navigating, the life, sharing my children, and also processing having to face my ex, who was my abuser. It's very difficult, but we're getting through it. And I am so grateful that all of you are here to listen today. Your work is very important, and I hope you take our experiences and are able to apply them with your future and your future clients that you may work with.
Thank you, Emily. So a lot of times we are asked, what exactly is financial abuse and how does that relate to what FinAbility's mission is and the population that they serve? And how does that relate to domestic abuse in general? So financial abuse tends to focus on, abuse in general. A lot of people think it's about violence, and that can be a huge component of it, but most often it is, the goal of it is control. And so financial abuse is often focused with the goal of controlling the finances, controlling a partner's ability to earn an income, to get an education, to have access to financial resources and financial knowledge. And this was unbeknownst to me until just about a year ago, that financial abuse, if there is other forms of domestic abuse, financial abuse is also part of it, and 98 to 99% of the time. So again, it's about control, and they're trying to, if a partner's trying to control one aspect of their partner's life, finances are often part of it. It's also a resource to escape. So I'm going to just be asking some questions of the group and invite each panelist to chime in as they see fit with their stories and insights that they have. So let me start with you, Ruhani. What are some of the signs of financial abuse that some people might not recognize initially?
Yes, thank you for the question. So financial abuse is used to exert power and control over a person in a way that diminishes or limits their autonomy and freedom to choose the direction and meaning of their own life. I want to share a personal story of mine to help illustrate this. So I was married for 10 years to a hospitalist physician, and he earned in the top 5% of American taxpayers. My husband was a collector of cars, so we always had at least 3 or more cars at any given time in our household. One was the minivan that was for myself and my 3 kids, and it was the only car that had automatic transmission. The other cars in our household had manual transmission, which I couldn't operate. And the other vehicles that we owned were sports cars, which had really impressive acceleration and speed, but they couldn't accommodate 3 car seats for our kids. Back in the winter of 2017, they were 6 months old, 3 years old, and 5 years old. My husband was a travel physician. So during that winter, a few days before he left for work, and he was gone for about 4 days on this particular travel stint, we had a very severe winter storm. We're in Greensboro, North Carolina. All the roads were covered in 2 to 3 inches of snow. And this is such a rare occurrence over here that we didn't have the infrastructure to plow the roads. That entire week, the schools and businesses were mostly closed until the snow melted the next week. So it was in this context that my husband needed to get to his job about 3 hours away. And he didn't want to take any of his sports cars to work because he would risk damaging them on the icy roads. He decided to take my minivan to work, and I didn't have much of a say in the matter. Well, the very next day, my 6-month-old woke up and his right eye was so swollen that he couldn't open it. I panicked and I sent a photo to my husband asking him what to do. Since he was a doctor, I trusted his opinion. As I expected, he told me to just stay home and wait for it to resolve on its own. But I had a really hard time accepting this advice. So I sent the picture to my mother-in-law, and she urged me to take my son to urgent care. She didn't know that I didn't have a car to use. I had 2 sports cars at my disposal, but I couldn't drive them because they're manual transmission and they didn't fit 3 car seats anyways. I was in a predicament. I spent the next several hours reaching out to my friends and my babysitter, trying to find a ride to urgent care. It wasn't an easy task to find someone that would fit all 4 of us in their car. And it meant I was also asking my friends with their own young children to find someone to care for their little ones and to drive in unsafe conditions to take me and my family to urgent care. I was very lucky to get help from my son. And at the urgent care clinic, he received several doses of steroids to help calm the inflammation in his eyes. And before returning home, the nurses trained me how to use an EpiPen at home in case this happened again. They warned me that if there was another episode, my 6-month-old son's breathing could be affected, and it was important to keep the pen on me at all times. During my marriage, I saw this experience as just another usual day of supporting my husband's career as a travel physician and raising my family on my own during his absences. I thought I was being a good wife by supporting him through thick and thin and rising to the occasion in a crisis like this. But I realized much later this was a form of neglect and financial abuse. And given our economic circumstances, there really was no reason for me to be left with 3 young kids and no transportation during multiple days of inclement weather and solo parenting. I was denied the material supports I needed to succeed in my role as a stay-at-home mom, and there wasn't a justification for it. Our family had 3 cars, a home with a private pool, a 3-car garage, and we went on expensive vacations every year. There was just no justification for me and my 3 kids to be left in such dire circumstances that winter. Years later, my husband initiated a divorce in 2020, and I began to learn the meaning and the impact of financial abuse. If I had been empowered earlier, I would have objected more vocally to being left to raise my 3 kids solo and without sufficient material resources. And I wouldn't have internalized these feelings of failure and worthlessness that my husband indoctrinated in me. And this is why FinAbility's work matters so much. FinAbility raises awareness of the occurrence and prevalence of financial abuse, and FinAbility helps to remove the shame and humiliation from surviving these degrading experiences.
Thank you so much, Rouhani. Emily, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit. In my case, my finances weren't necessarily controlled by an abusive partner. Excuse me. My ex had a severe drug problem and would spend hundreds of our money on drugs. He was not contributing to bills. And in my relationship, I also experienced extensive physical abuse and would receive many threats for money. One example he said was the only thing keeping his fist out of my face is if I gave him $500. I know this is hard to hear, but it's a very real circumstance. And when you're in survival mode, it's easier to give up the money than have to deal with a physical altercation. He would also call my job, which had me in fear of losing my job. I could not afford to lose my job and insurance when I had 3 small children at home. And then lastly, there's often a lot of anxiety surrounding spending money when you're living in these situations. I hated simply going to the grocery store because I would have to check the cost of every single item, put things back, or make sure I had enough to purchase items that my ex wanted in order to avoid an argument. This can be very traumatizing, and you don't necessarily realize what's happening until you're out of it, when you're finally safe and financially stable, which is why I love that we're on this side of things and you all are working with FinAbility to provide these resources for survivors so that they can feel empowered to get out of these situations and not have to live this way.
Emily, I think you make a really good point there that it's kind of a slippery slope. You don't realize you're in it until you get out of it and you're like, holy cow, how did that happen? So thank you for calling attention to that. What do you guys think is important about economic empowerment in the context of financial and domestic abuse?
Well, from my experience, I felt that economic empowerment helped to restore my sense of self-esteem. It replaced my feeling of helplessness with a renewed sense of hope and optimism about my future. As I said before, I was a stay-at-home mom for 9 years. And during that time, I often struggled to care for my kids to the best of my ability because I had no space to care for myself. I was pouring from an empty cup and losing my mind and soul by doing so. To carve out some space for self-care, I started an e-commerce business selling custom designed bench cushions. It started as an Etsy shop and then developed into its own domain. I was able to hire some seamstresses to make cushions and fulfill orders while I focused my efforts on self-teaching, web design, digital marketing, accounting, and more. But I still struggled to grow my entrepreneurial endeavor and to achieve economic empowerment. As I said before, I gave birth to 3 kids in a span of 5 years, and we moved homes 5 times in the same period. So there was a constant cycle of pregnancy, then postpartum recovery, then breastfeeding. And at the same time, I was packing, then house hunting and unpacking. And the cycle would just repeat and repeat. So there was a lot of instability. And many of my days were just spent in survival mode. If I had been able to achieve economic empowerment, it would have really limited my husband's ability to exert his power and control over me. It would have, I wouldn't have internalized as deeply the feeling of failure when he criticized me for not contributing towards the mortgage and the bills and the financial needs for our growing family. And I would not have been as isolated from the supportive people in my life. So having stable employment and self-sufficient economic independence has changed my life dramatically on my journey to a better life. And it's opened up a world of new possibilities for myself and my 3 children.
Thank you for that, Ruhani. You make such a good point about how much it does for kind of your self-image and your confidence, and knowing that you can stand on your own 2 feet when you have your income. I think that's one of the things that sometimes may be overlooked is because domestic violence really is about control, and it's about tearing down the other person so you can control them. I had economic resources because I was the primary breadwinner. I did not have access to a lot of those resources for a lot of stupid reasons and cultural reasons. And but I was amazed at how much just my confidence, and even though I was fearful of making financial decisions afterwards, I would actually call my dad and my bonus mom, who is an accountant, and say, okay, I'm thinking about doing this or paying off this debt or whatever, and just like looking for information and validation. If I had known FinAbility was a thing back then, it probably would have been easier to like engage with. Well, when I got divorced, FinAbility wasn't in existence yet, but something like that, it would have been easier because it's hard to ask for help, and there's so much shame that comes with all of this. And so thank you for sharing that. Other comments or questions? Okay, what resources were helpful to you or would have been helpful to you to gain that financial empowerment as you were leaving or shortly after you left?
I'll just touch on some of the resources that I use, which were a lot of different social services. One of the big ones, I had to take advantage of purchase of care to help me with daycare costs with 3 small kids. That is an insane amount of money, especially on one income. So I was able to use that to really help me. And then SNAP or food stamp benefits, depends kind of what it's called in your state, but getting those food stamp benefits to buy groceries and formula that can be very expensive. There's such a negative stigma around using some of these resources, but I had to kind of swallow my pride and use them. There was a time I was embarrassed to use the card in the grocery store. I worked full time. I felt like I was successful and where I needed to be, but I still wasn't making enough to survive. And then dealing with dangerous relationship and living conditions. But I just had to remind myself it wasn't shameful. It's necessary to use these resources and these services to get myself standing on my own 2 feet. So kind of keeping that language in mind when you're working with individuals in a similar situation, just trying to take that shame out of it and just encouraging them to use what's available. And just temporarily, I knew I wasn't going to need this forever, but I needed to use it. Some resources that might be helpful for others in a similar situation, resources for legal fees or directing them to attorneys or agencies that have free consultations. A lot of people might need help with filing the documents, and the amount of money it costs in just filing court documents or attorney fees can be astronomical. I myself accumulated over $20,000 in attorney fees. Every time I made a 15-minute phone call to talk about custody or the PFA, protection from abuse order, it would cost me $100. So at a very scary and overwhelming time of my life, this was so much more stressful, but I didn't have many other options. And on a teacher's salary, I was not in any position to afford these legal fees. Another resource I used was the Victims' Compensation Fund. So most states do have these funds available to survivors or victims who have either criminal charges that are pending with a abuser, or if they filed a PFA, it should be available to most individuals. And these can cover resources to pay for things like repairs. I mean, my house was completely destroyed by my ex to the point that it wasn't safe to live in with my children. He had put holes in the wall and broke so many different things. And I had to pay to fix all of that. The victims' compensation funds can cover things for safety measures, such as changing locks or camera systems, just to kind of give people peace of mind if they have a security camera. That could be something that's really helpful. And if you're aware of resources for that, I'm sure many people would take advantage of that. I also wanted to touch on child support. Rouhani and I have been going through this process with small children. And child support can be a huge hurdle for some people. It's not an immediate solution that some people think, like, oh, you're divorced, you're separated, now you get child support. It doesn't work that way. Mediation can take months to be scheduled, and even another few months after that to be settled. So it's definitely not something that happens in a prompt or timely fashion. And specifically in my case, I applied for child support probably a year or two after I was even out of the relationship, just because I had been going through so many other things that I had to direct my attention to. And then when I finally did file for child support in 2021, COVID was happening, and staffing shortages just within the state in general, and other legal obstacles. I still do not receive child support 2 years later. So it's not something that realistically can help a lot of survivors. So I just kind of wanted to mention that. And then lastly, FinAbility's toolkits would have helped me tremendously. I put myself in a ton of credit card debt. I even put tuition for an additional master's degree on my credit card, which was not a smart move, but I needed to finish my master's at the time in order to earn a higher income to support myself and my family. And just the loan process and things was pretty complicated. And I'm like, I need to make more money now so I can get this credit card, get this money, put the tuition on my credit card. Well, now I have high interest rates and just putting myself in more debt. So just so many things that you don't even realize are happening, or you don't realize the impact that it's going to have until you're dealing with it or out of it. So that's why it's so important to just be sharing these resources to support others who could benefit from them and avoid some of these situations.
I like the point you made, Emily, about, just there's so much you don't know. And that reminds me of, the phrase, we don't know what we don't know. And I think that's one of the huge roles that FinAbility plays for a lot of survivors is that knowledge and one-on-one financial counseling that helps people not only have an understanding and make good decisions now, but arms them with knowledge and skills to help them the rest of their life. I think one other thing I will add that I think is helpful to a lot of people, it may not be like maybe immediately pragmatic, but I think it has this ripple effect that's enormous, is FinAbility does take away or address some of the stigma and especially the shame. Like, I can't tell you how embarrassed I was and how ashamed I was to be, I'm the primary breadwinner. I make a lot more than he does, but I don't have access to any of those resources. It was mortifying. And if I'd known back in 2016 and had been on the FinAbility website and said, oh, this almost always without exception goes with other kinds of domestic abuse, I probably would have, that shame would have kind of fallen away a little more quickly instead of how long it took. So I think that's really important. It's for the survivors, not just their financial well-being, but the mental, the psychological, the emotional as well is a huge deal. And that has a ripple effect for that person and other people as well. How about you guys talk about what impact do you see FinAbility having on individual survivors and their families?
I can talk about that. So, I mean, I think we've just kind of been highlighting how amazing FinAbility can be. And I'm just so proud to be part of this organization, and always grateful that Stacy started all of this, because FinAbility can have such a huge impact on survivors and their families. It can offer hope to survivors that they can have a successful future and the life that they deserve. At our monthly meeting with the SAC members, I shared that when you're working with someone, they might not, they're in the moment, right? They're trying to get out of this, they're trying to get through this. They're not necessarily thinking about their future. So just reminding them, like, this is what you have to do right now. I know you're in this moment, but if you take advantage of these things and use these resources, here's what it can look like. Here's what it can do for you in the future. And just reminding them that their reality right now doesn't have to stay that way. And just encourage them to be thinking of that bigger picture and reminding them of the life that they deserve. FinAbility is connecting them with resources to care for themselves, to give them back that freedom, a sense of independence that is often stifled in a domestic violence relationship. I can share just personally, when I was out of the relationship, I was shopping one day and I bought myself a perfume. And when I bought the perfume, it felt funny. And I thought about it. I'm like, why do I feel this way when I'm buying a perfume? I think it was like $18. It was not some, extravagant expense. And I bought this perfume and I felt a little funny about it. And then it hit me. I had never had the money to spend that little bit extra on myself. And it took me back to the person that I used to be before the relationship. And I used to love, all my perfumes and lotions and just self-care and buying these little things for myself just to remind yourself that you're important. Love yourself first. And I didn't do that for so many years. And then finally, out of the situation, and once I was a little more stable, I was able to do that again. And it's just a reminder how important it is that we, do the self-care and have that sense of independence and financial freedom to, spoil ourselves from time to time. For survivors with children, FinAbility is ultimately saving lives and protecting their children, protecting survivors' children, and they can be such little children who can't protect themselves. So that is huge. It's not just adults, it's not just survivors, it is everyone. And this has a ripple effect on the larger community. We're taking care of our children and our future and making sure that people are safe. We're dealing with mental health, financial stability. All of these things impact our community. So that just highlights just kind of a little bit of what we're trying to do and how the impact can just be huge, and how you guys can partner with FinAbility and survivors and just be making such a huge change, not in just one person's lives, but the whole world. Just really, that's our goal, right?
Yeah.
Gonna go global, Stacy.
I like it. I appreciate that, Emily, the kind of how you frame that with, you're not just helping the survivor. FinAbility is, the goal is to help the survivor and their children and their families. And it reminds me that, we can't take care of anyone else until we take care of ourselves. But man, when we have the resources to be our best self and to thrive instead of just survive, most people that especially come from an unfortunate and bad situation, once they get to a good spot, they're like, okay, I was helped. Who can I help? And that becomes really fulfilling and empowering. And so it's not just, to me, I see also FinAbility as, yes, potentially having this global impact, because when you help one person, they generally, I think, just want to kind of spread that, because their life gets transformed and they're like, dang, I want everybody to have this. So thank you for sharing that. Other
Can
thoughts?
I add one more thing to that?
Yes,
Meredith?
absolutely.
So yeah, just going with what you just finished with, I was fortunate to have family and a large support system, but not everyone has that. So you don't always know what your impact is on someone. And just that you might be thinking that they have a support system, or that maybe you're not making such a huge impact on someone, but really you could be that person that is saving them, essentially. So you don't always know what that person is going through or the extent of it, and how big of an impact you truly can have on them.
Absolutely sure. Yeah. Let's see, if you had access to FinAbility's services when you left or shortly thereafter, what difference would it have made for you? FinAbility's still a young nonprofit, but if you'd had access back when you were getting out of the relationship and the situation, how would FinAbility services have changed things for you? I think for me, going back to that shame thing, it would have been a big deal, and I would have been less inhibited in talking about it or sharing. And then kind of on the flip side, I think it would have helped me feel more empowered earlier and have confidence to like reach out to FinAbility to say, okay, I need that one-on-one counseling related to this. Like I had all these student loans, more than my fair share, and how do I navigate this or whatever. I was very I lacked a lot of confidence in making financial decisions, because it was that was not allowed to me at the time previously. And so being able to do that with someone not family, I think would have been really helpful, because it would have been me going to get that help from a objective third party. It was hard to call up my bonus mom and say, okay, taxes and whatever it was. I knew she was more than willing to help, and she was amazing. But it was still really hard. And I think I might have had more confidence if I could approach somebody, an objective third party that said, and that's trauma informed, to say, you know what, this happens to so many people. I would have said, it does? Really? Like, I just thought I was deficient in some way. And so I think that would have made a big difference for me, as far as kind of stepping into my own confidence and going, okay, I'm going to make this decision, whether it's financial or something else, and have the confidence to do it, and recognize that the sky's probably not going to fall down. Maybe it's not going to go beautifully, but the sky's not going to fall down. That would have been a huge deal. Anybody else want to kind of tackle that? How would FinAbility services have changed things for you if you'd had them?
So for me, just the sense of community and togetherness that I've experienced by meeting and connecting with other survivors has been hugely impactful. And I wish I would have found this support years and years ago. Just Emily's story about the perfume really resonated with me. I have a similar story. I'm a chocolate addict, and during my pregnancy, I always really craved Nutella. It's like a hazelnut chocolate spread that I loved. I really enjoyed it on my toast, on my waffles and everything. And my ex-husband would tell me that it's too expensive and I need to stop spending so much money on Nutella. And I found that really humiliating and degrading to be treated that way. And I sometimes questioned if maybe I was in the wrong for being too selfish and insisting on having my Nutella. But if I would have had this community support and awareness that I'm not the only one experiencing this type of treatment, it would have made those kinds of comments just kind of fly off my shoulders more easily. It wouldn't have like implanted inside of my thoughts and my sense of confidence and my self-esteem as deeply as it did. And even today, like in each of my interactions with FinAbility members, it's always helped to elevate my sense of confidence and self-esteem by just a little bit each time, by connecting with people who've had similar experiences, people that allow me to realize that I'm not alone in what I've been through, and that doesn't have to define me. That is not the end of my story. I have a chance to rewrite a new chapter of my life's story.
Oh, I love that, Ruhani. You just gave me all the goosebumps rewriting your story. I think that is so true. And, that there is that power. It sounds silly, but you guys are making a great point. Like, I know there have been times after my split where I would, yes, especially when I worked for a difficult boss, I would go get a massage, and it just felt so good to do it without like guilt or knowing I was going to be hounded about it, or whatever it is. Getting that independence and having control of your own finances is just transformative. Let's see, one more question. How does FinAbility help survivors, not just in the moment of leaving or right after they've left, but over the long term, and to get their freedom and well-being back?
Yeah, I can jump in on this one, though, quite frankly, I think you all explained and touched upon this so well already. I'm not sure I have too much to add, but as we design FinAbility's programs, we're looking to not only help folks build the financial acumen, tools, and access the resources needed to break free from abuse, but really our hope is that they're able to fundamentally rebuild their lives and pass on that knowledge to their kids and the larger community. On average, it takes a survivor 7 attempts to permanently leave an abusive relationship, and we're really hoping we can help reduce that number to 1, preventing future violence and just creating more hope for folks as well.
Thank you for that, Stacy. Anybody else want to add to or chime in? All right, how about we open things up to questions from those on the Zoom call. If you have a question or a comment, especially a question that you'd like to learn more about FinAbility or what we do or who we aim to serve, please feel free to put your comment in the chat, and we will take that on as best we can. Stacy, would you like to give any background about kind of how FinAbility came about and how long it's been around and any of that history?
Yes, I'd be happy to. And as things come up in the chat, we can definitely bounce to the questions, but a bit more about our organization. FinAbility was founded in October of 2020, so we just turned 3 years old, and we're a survivor-founded and led organization. The idea came from lived experience, and we interviewed over 100 survivors, advocates, and nonprofit professionals, which is what led to our focus on economic empowerment and access to financial resources. Our current programming includes our financial toolkit, which has over 20 modules to answer some of survivors' most pressing safety and financial questions. They're meant to be really short, quick reads, and just move you to action and to helpful resources as quickly as possible. We also offer virtual classes in partnership with Financial Beginnings. These are open to both survivors and advocates and cover critical skills like credit building, debt management, budgeting, goal setting, etc. And we are piloting one-on-one financial counseling. So we're very excited to make that more available, looking to 2024. And through feedback actually from our Survivor Advisory Committee, we're going to be focusing a lot on community building next year as well, finding ways to share more survivor stories and really combat that shame and stigma that's come up a lot in today's conversation. We want folks to realize they're not alone, not only through hearing stories that are similar to theirs, but actually helping them connect to folks who have that lived experience too.
Thank you, Stacy. We've got a kind of a comment / question from Rhonda, who's notes she's curious how people come to FinAbility for help. And I'm guessing a lot of it is just Google, but Stacy, I'm guessing you can speak more broadly or comprehensively to that
Yes.
comment.
We are a digital first organization, so we do all of our programming online, so folks can access our toolkit for free by just going to FinAbilityUS.org. That's also where you can register for classes, and if we're not currently offering them, we do have the recording links available, so you can always watch them, and there's also a sign-up sheet for our financial counseling on the website as well.
Awesome, thank you. And Rochelle asks, does FinAbility do or have programs that focus on educating teens about financial abuse so they can be aware of those issues as they get older, or that focuses on workplaces so companies can support employees with financial abuse?
We do present at a local high school about red flags to look for in relationships and how to protect your finances, but it's a very small part of what we do at the moment. It's critical, and I do hope we can expand into that area more in the future. But if you know of organizations that are doing that or anyone we should be partnering with, please let us know. We always love partnering with organizations that do that kind of work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, strategic partnerships are the way to go. One more question. Has your personal empowerment changed how you view the larger economy? That's a really good question, and I think there's a lot of different directions that can go. Anybody want to take the first stab at that one?
Yes, I think I can speak to this one. So as I shared earlier, before having kids, before marriage, I was really motivated in pursuing a healthcare career. I was enrolled at medical school. I completed a year of coursework, and then I had like a 10-year break from my career. And I found it really, really challenging to sort of forge a new career path. I knew that I don't have the option to go back and resume medical school again, but it was a struggle for me to figure out what I would do. And so it has really shaped my views on the larger economy, because I think as young people, we're taught to like choose a career based on what your passion is. But when you're coming out of a divorce with the responsibilities for a family of 4, and it's a pandemic, your passion doesn't really matter. You just need to figure out something practical. And so that's how I kind of ended up where I am now. I'm working in the domestic violence space at the North Carolina Coalition. I'm working on a master's degree in IT because I'm leveraging my lived experiences, and I'm also looking for work in fields that are remote first. So I'll never have to really negotiate for a job that's hybrid. All IT jobs are by definition hybrid or remote because so much of the work is computer based. So yeah, to kind of answer your question about how I view the larger economy, it's not my career path is no longer driven by what my passion is. It's driven by what my most essential needs are and how I can get those met. So it's kind of changed how I view those things.
I think I guess I don't think as much about the economy, and maybe if I were in a different situation, I would, but I definitely think about how especially American society and segments of American society structurally encourage situations that make people vulnerable. So I grew up Southern Baptist, generally speaking. Women are supposed to be stay at home. The man is the head of the household. I had a career, but it was very much the husband gets, it's like there's a quote tiebreaker. The husband gets to make the breaking tie if he wants different things. And I think that's supremely problematic for a whole lot of reasons. And now I've lived in Utah the last 11 or 12 years, very patriarchal society, and women kind of have a say at home, but not too many other places. And so I think more, I guess, about the societal structures and social expectations that make people, more often women, but sometimes men, really vulnerable, like not being able to, not be encouraged. Most of my female students think they want to go get a career, but a lot of them will be encouraged not to have a career and to be a stay-at-home mom, and that just puts people in a really vulnerable position, because nobody gets into a relationship, much less gets married, and thinks this person's going to treat me like crap later, or they're going to destroy my credit. We don't. And so we need that more of a societal expectation and encouragement to ensure both parties have a way to support themselves, and that can look like a lot of different things. So that's my 2 cents. Let's see, what other questions do we have? So Tiffany asked about free trainings. Yes, they are free. And FinAbility is a nonprofit. Let's see. Other questions or comments that panelists want to think are important to highlight here in this discussion?
I'll just say it's been really nice reading some of the comments. We do face a lot of shame, embarrassment, so many different feelings. So the fact that some of you are being very validating in the comments is so important. We've talked about trauma-informed care and just how important that is when working with anyone, and not even just survivors of domestic violence. I mean, you just never know what anyone's going through. So it's so important to be sensitive to that. So I just wanted to say thank you and just kind of highlight that I think it's very much appreciated.
Absolutely. Yeah. Other comments or questions? Tony asks, as more and more of us seek flex spending to help survivors, what is the one thing that you would want funders to know about what you needed most when you left your abusive partner? That's a great question. Who wants to take a first stab? Yeah.
So first and foremost, I would want funders to know that survivors know best what they need. So when funding is attached to a lot of rules and red tape and strings, it sort of disempowers the survivor from deciding for themselves what's best for their journey to rebuild their life. And so I would really want funders to be aware that survivors are really the experts on their own situation. And when you give them flexible funds, it's important to really trust their intuition in knowing how best to use that money.
I'll second that, and especially the empowerment side of it. It can be super hard, I think, for anybody to ask for help of any kind. And especially, since abuse really is about control and it's about tearing down the other party, you don't have that confidence and self-image to feel like it's okay to ask for help. It becomes even harder. And so, yes, anything that helps their survivor to stand on their own 2 feet and do it on their own is just like huge, I think, because there's one thing that, like, I felt like I knew here that I could stand on my own 2 feet and make these decisions, but I didn't know it here. And so if we can help survivors get both, I think that's a really big deal. And so funders that are willing to help with that, or also have ideas about how we can do both, I think that's huge, because this isn't just a help for them when they leave or are left and they have to put their lives back together. It's for the rest of their lives. And yeah, there's not very, I guess there are some opportunities we have to impact somebody's life forever, but this is a really unique one. And so thank you for that question. It's great. Let's see. Any other comments? We're kind of getting close to the end of our time together. Anything else you wonderful ladies want to add and to the conversation here that you think listeners, funders, survivors might want to know, or people who know survivors? I think probably all of us know a survivor. We just may not know that they're a survivor.
Yes. I just want to thank everyone for their time to come and join and listen to our stories today. And I want to remind everyone that domestic violence happens to anyone and everywhere. And like Meredith said, we all probably know someone who is experiencing domestic violence, even if they haven't told us. And so we all have a role in ending domestic violence by being good listeners, being non-judgmental, and recognizing that we all have an ability to help survivors of abuse. Nonprofits are doing a lot of the important work, but as neighbors and as colleagues, as friends, as family members, we have the ability to help survivors in those roles as well. So there's so much that individuals can do in addition to the work that nonprofits are doing to support survivors on their journey to a better life.
I'll second that. I'll say too that kind of the if you see something, say something. If you hear something, say something. Because I will say, I did not realize I was in an abusive relationship until after I got out, and I was like, holy cow. But if there's things I told some people, and if they would have said, Meredith, like, that's abuse, that's emotional abuse, that's financial abuse, I would have said, really? And it would have gotten my attention. But it is like boiling a frog. And so helping somebody realize that they're in that situation, I think, can be really critical in that first step to helping them change their situation. Tiffany asked, how can we get involved as an advocate? Stacey, you want to speak to that?
I think that's a great transition. So let me share my screen again really fast. I might have to do it a couple times to get the actual screen I want. Yay, having several monitors. Okay. Can everyone see the slide with our current Survivor Advisory Committee? Awesome. So first of all, I just want to once again thank our amazing Survivor Advisory Committee, Meredith, Ruhani, Emily. Thank you so much for all of your contributions today, and to our larger committee for their work putting on events like this. I think we've covered this pretty well. So just cutting to contact information. If you are interested in getting involved with our organization, excuse me, getting over a cold, do feel welcome to contact me directly. Our Survivor Advisory Committee, they're 2-year terms, so we won't have vacancies for that until 2025. So unfortunately, that's a little bit of a unique situation, but we do have lots of other ways folks can engage in their capacity as a survivor or an advocate. So we do have listservs with opportunities to join listening sessions, provide program feedback, or to be advocates for the type of work that we do. So please do reach out, whether you want to contribute to strategic planning, programming, share needs you're seeing, or access our resources. Do feel like you can contact us at any time.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you guys so much for participating today. And we appreciate your questions. We appreciate your support of FinAbility and the population that we're trying to serve. And we hope to interact with you again. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you,
You guys
everybody.
have a great day.
I'm loving Tiffany's comments in the chat. I don't know if she's still on here or not.
Yeah, I was just noticing that as well.
Yes, Tiffany, I love it. Just offering that hope, you know, being that
I really
bright
appreciate
light.
you guys. I really do. Sorry I talk a lot in the chat. I'm just really passionate about changing the way things have been for so many. And until I experienced it myself, I had no idea the amount of barriers, not just with personal, but outside of ourselves, like external barriers that are placed due to laws and rights. And, I know every state is different. That's why I'm trying to advocate for not only my state, but other people. And so I talked to state representatives and Congress, and I didn't used to until I faced this, but I would love to, get involved sooner than 2025. So if you guys were to get funding of any way, if I was to get funding for you guys, would you be interested in opening up advocacy sooner than that? Or are you unable to do that?
Yeah, Tiffany, I think you mentioned in the chat that you're in Oregon.
Yeah.
I'm based in Oregon too, so why don't
Okay.
let's grab some coffee and chat about it.
Okay. That'd be great.
Yeah, I would love to connect with you in person.
Okay. Thank you guys so much for everything. I learned a lot, and I really
Thank you.
appreciate all your perspectives and just seeing things from, multiple ways. I think it's so important because, we only know as much as we've experienced, and it's really been enlightening. So thank you.
Thank you.
Tiffany.
You guys have a great day.
Thanks. You too.